Hello everyone, my name is Brian. Welcome to my permaculture project. I'm here today to talk to you about some Paulownia elongata seeds that I've been growing. Paulownia elongata is one of the fastest growing deciduous trees in the world. There's other like conifer species that grow faster, but Paulownia is among the deciduous trees, one of the fastest growing trees in the world. It is not super commonly known in the United States. It's a native, actually, it's a native of the United States, but it went extinct here several thousand years ago. And it was found in Southeast Asia, and then it was reintroduced into the United States in like the 1800s. What people used it for is the seeds of the Paulownia are actually very light and fluffy, and they used the seeds as a packing material in shipping products. And so those seeds, they're these light fluffy seeds, they get blown all over. The seeds actually got blown out of this packing material and actually started germinating as trees. And so kind of interesting story there. In other parts of the world, Paulownia is known as really useful lumber. It's very light. It's similar to balsa wood, so it's very light but very strong at the same time. It's considered a hardwood, even though in comparison to many other hardwoods, it doesn't look that hard. When you look at the metrics, it is actually a hardwood relative to the weight of the wood. It's very, very light but strong. And so yeah, the best comparison is to balsa wood. So it's very flexible, very bendy. It takes a lot to break it, but at the same time, it's very light. So it gets used in things like surfboard making, boat making. It's also rot resistant. So any situation where you're using it around water, using wood around water, Paulownia is a good option because it's rot resistant. And there's been some Turkish studies that have shown that it's actually strong enough to use as building material in a home. I'm not sure if the standards here in the U.S. are such that Paulownia is eligible for home building, but in Turkey at least, they've cleared it for use in home building. So it is, remarkably strong wood. And our farm, we do a combination of goats and sheep that we sell in a monthly subscription model. And we live on a pretty small acreage, so we really have to stretch our land as best we can. So one of my interests in Paulownia is actually the fodder value. Paulownia has these big giant leaves. If you manage them for leaf production, you can get leaves that are literally just these giant pizza-sized leaves. You can look up images online and see how big these leaves get. And so, it takes management to obtain leaves of that size. But if you manage it a certain way, you can get these giant leaves. And they're actually very high in protein. They've got a really complete amino acid profile, comparable to alfalfa. Many of the amino acids produced by Paulownia are actually comparable to alfalfa. And I'll include a graphic here that shows the comparison of Paulownia to alfalfa. And so it's a really nice combination that, you've got this nice, light, durable, useful, and high value, I forgot to mention high value wood, together with leaves that are, first of all, highly productive, easy to manage. They're large, so they're easy to manage. And with a high fodder value, high protein and amino acid content. So that's kind of the interest that I have in Paulownia on my farm is, by end of April into May, all of our pastures are starting to get eaten down. And then I have to worry about, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February is basically the months that I'm feeding hay. So anything that I can do to offset the hay expense is tremendously valuable. So that's kind of my goal on the farm in general, is to plant enough trees to where trees will grow throughout the summer with minimal inputs. You don't need to water them a whole lot. I've installed swales, so I'm storing the rainwater, and that water will be stored deep in the soil. The tree roots will go down nice and deep to be able to capture that stored water. And so, I'm hoping that the trees will offer a really nice counterbalance, that in the early spring, the trees will be bare. The grasses will start growing up because there will be minimal interference from the trees. Throughout the course of the spring and summer, the trees will start to leaf out, and then going into fall and winter, I can store up some of that leaf fodder and use it during the lean times when our pastures are all eaten down. And so this Paulownia presents a really nice opportunity for that, because it's, like I've mentioned before, it's got a great fodder value, but it performs well on a variety of soils, and it also grows extremely fast, and that's really what you need in a situation like this. Is if you're trying to use tree fodder to grow your animals, your trees need to grow quickly, right? You might look at a hill and you might see, oh, look at that hill, it's covered in trees, it's covered in brush, and you think, if I could only get my animals in there, they'd have a heyday, they'd have so much to eat, it'd last them for years and years. And that may be true, that it may last them, but if the tree does not replenish itself over time, and your animals eat the tree down, and then it doesn't regenerate itself quickly enough, then that's a temporary fix. And a couple years down the road, after your animals have eaten the trees all down, there isn't going to be anything left. So that fast growing aspect is super important for our purposes, because we need to make sure that as the animals are eating the trees down, they're able to regenerate themselves the very next year. Paulownia, the way it's often managed is it's managed as a coppice tree. Coppicing means you cut it off at ground level. So what happens is the roots establish themselves. As the roots establish themselves, you get this nice, robust system, and then when you cut the tree off near ground level, it's got all that energy and it's got all that root mass to where when it sends up shoots the very next year, those things will just take off, and they can grow up to 10, 15 feet in a single year after they've been coppiced. And that's the type of regrowth that we need. Paulownia is a C4 plant, which means that they don't have the traditional photosynthesis of like a cool weather crop. They actually have C4 is basically like a warm weather photosynthesis. And what happens with C4, C3 photosynthesis, the challenge with C3 photosynthesis is that for a plant to respire and take in CO2 to be able to complete the photosynthesis cycle, it has to be able to access CO2 through pores in the bottom side of the leaf. In a hot climate, though, what happens is those pores have to be shut down, otherwise water will evaporate out of the plants, and due to the water loss, it'll stress the plants out. So C4 photosynthesis kind of separates the photosynthesis into two different steps, to where the tree can continually respire and get all the CO2 that it needs, while at the same time not losing water into the atmosphere, so it doesn't suffer that heat stress. C4 photosynthesis is known, commonly understood, that when a plant has C4 photosynthesis, it grows at a much faster rate than a plant with C3 photosynthesis. So some examples include corn. If you think corn can grow 10, 12, 14 feet in a single year. Another example is sorghum Sudan grass, where you can have stands of sorghum Sudan grass over your head in a single year. So plants with C4 photosynthesis are known to have this really robust growth. And Paulownia elongata is actually a C4 plant, and it actually grows with these just astronomical growth rates. Another really interesting thing about Paulownia, it's not a legume, but it actually is a nitrogen fixer. And so there's yet another benefit to Paulownia, is that if you're using these trees as fodder, the tree is harvesting nitrogen, and then as you're feeding this fodder to the animals, that's taking the nitrogen that the tree has harvested out of the atmosphere and depositing it into the soil. So it's a really just amazing opportunity to, like we're saying here, grow some really high quality wood, have easy to manage fodder with high protein, high amino acid content, that is, drought. I won't say drought tolerant, but it's tolerant of varying levels of moisture, and it's tolerant of varying soil conditions. That coppices well, that regrows well from a coppice. It really is a great combination for a silvopasture system like we're attempting to implement here. Yet another benefit of Paulownia is that it has these really fragrant flowers. I haven't actually seen the inflorescences yet, but my understanding is that they kind of have a jasmine scent to them. So there's really beautiful, fragrant inflorescences, and they also have a heavy nectar flow. So I'm going to be hiring someone to maintain some beehives on the property, and we'll have black locust. We already have black locust on the property, and we'll also have this Paulownia elongata. And that combination means that during certain times of the year, we'll have a heavy nectar flow from the black locust, and also the Paulownia also produces a really heavy nectar flow. So we'll be able to, kind of in the permaculture world, that people are always talking about stacking functions. So here we are stacking functions like crazy, right? So I have been growing Paulownia from seed, and Paulownia seed is very, very, you get a lot of it for just a small cost. So I got a couple of grams of Paulownia seed, which is, I calculated it out to be about 8,000 seeds for about $15. I got it from Sheffield Seeds, in case anyone's wondering. And so these seeds are just extremely numerous, so it's very inexpensive to propagate from seed. And of course, when you propagate from seed, you never really know what you're going to get. So it's just like any other type of plant or tree or whatever, is that there's improved varieties, and then there's just your run-of-the-mill varieties that you grow from seed. So when you grow from seed, they're not going to have as astronomical of a growth rate as if you buy some patented varieties. There are patented varieties of Paulownia, or other improved varieties that people have actually bred with a specific purpose in mind. I've purchased some of those. I purchased it from a place in Georgia. They haven't arrived yet, but it is one of those improved varieties that's known to have a really high growth rate. So I will be planting some of those out as well. Just to put it in perspective, I bought 10 trees, and it cost me over $70. The seed side of things, I literally bought 8,000 seeds, and it only cost me $15. So big cost difference there. So if you're trying to plant out an entire field of Paulownia, then maybe seed is an option that you could look at to do that inexpensively. You can propagate Paulownia by root cuttings, and so for these high value trees that I'm purchasing, as long as they aren't patented, I plan on propagating out some of those by root cuttings, and that will also allow me to increase the number that I can plant without breaking the bank. So let's talk a little bit about growing Paulownia from seed. So that's what I have behind me here, is my Paulownia seedlings. And Paulownia seeds are surprisingly difficult to germinate. So Paulownia needs light to germinate, and it also needs sterile conditions. So you can't just toss it into the soil like a bean seed and just water it and have it grow. It really requires some kind of specialized conditions for it to grow. So what I did is I put a little bit of Paulownia seed into a clear jar with water, and then I just placed that in the windowsill to get some light. And I literally let it sit there for about 6 weeks, maybe even more, maybe 6 or 7 weeks. And the seeds are very, very slow to start germinating. But if you keep an eye on that jar, you'll see over time little tiny bits of root that start to grow on those seeds. Once you see those little bits of root start to grow, then you can start planting them out. So that's what I've done here, is I've got these seed trays. This is nice sterile soil. It's not, it's not garden soil. It's just a bagged sterile soil mix. It's soil less, right? It's got coco coir, it's got fertilizer, it's got, so it's soil less. That's what makes it sterile. And then I just took the seeds one by one with a toothpick, and I just put them on top of each cell. And then what I did is I sprayed each of these with mist. And I did that, I've been doing that 3 times a day, basically. And so it does require a bit of patience. It's a slow process, and it does require like high human input to be able to get it to function correctly, to get the seeds to germinate correctly. But I do have a pretty good success rate, and I'll show you that right now. It's interesting because even though it's known to be one of the fastest growing trees in the world, when you start it from seed, it seems to grow extremely slowly. So let's take a look at what I've got here. So these are them, and many of these are really, really tiny. So you can see here, that's a Paulownia when it's just barely germinated. This is a Paulownia that's germinating right now. So it's literally a little seed that sent down its root, and the leaves are just barely emerging from the seed packet, so to speak. This is one that's grown a little bit longer. I mean, not grown longer. These were all planted at the same time, but has, leafed out earlier and had more time to grow. This is my all-star right here. Look at that beauty. So I'm excited. This one's one that I'm going to keep my eye on. This one's nice because it's already forming a trunk. So that's pretty cool. Some of these I have multiple. Some of these I have multiple in because the seeds are so small that they take some finesse to work with. So, if you grow some of these from seed, you'll probably end up with some that had multiple in each cell. There's another where you've got 2 in this cell. And so that's where I'm at with my Paulownia, is they've leafed out and they've got their first set of true leaves. So the cotyledons are these tiny little things right here. And then when they're first starting to leaf out, they get leaves that look like, so you can see here they're starting to leaf out, and they get these tiny little leaves right in the middle there. So yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of what I'm doing with Paulownia, and talk a little bit about its benefits and where I see it fitting into our farm. This is kind of cool, this setup here. I've got this, these are 50 cell trays, and then I have this grow light on the plants 24 hours a day. So I turned it off for the purposes of the video because it's such an awkward color. But this is really nice. It just, 24 hours a day, it never really gets warm. It always stays nice and cool, so I don't have to worry about it starting a fire. It's a low wattage unit, so it's not going to break the bank. And no doubt it has had a great impact on the growing of the seeds. This is my little water bottle, and early on I was just spraying it down like this, and I would go all the way around the whole thing a couple of times. Now that they're starting to leaf out, I'm giving each cell its own little drink of water. So I go around a couple times a day, and I give each cell its own little drink like this. This is a corn seed that my daughter's planted. This is now 22 days later, and as you can see, even though the trees were pretty small when I was previewing them in the earlier segment of this video, Now they've grown substantially larger, even though it's only 22 days later. You can see significant growth, and you can see some of these leaves have really just taken off. I mean, some of these are just massive compared to what they were before. So if you're talking on a percentage basis, the rate of growth on these things is literally hundreds and hundreds of percent compared to what they were even just 22 days later. So that initial footage was taken on March 28th, and now it's April 19th, so 22 days. And that's the rate of growth that these things have undergone in 22 days. Pretty amazing. So I hope you found that interesting. If you're a tree nerd like myself, then hopefully that gives you some ideas. And yeah, if you're looking to do like a silvopasture system, silviculture system, this is one option that you could consider. It looks to be an up-and-coming market where it's not commonly grown in the United States, but it looks like it really does have a lot of potential. And we've talked about all the benefits of Paulownia. If you think that fits into your system, then I think it's something interesting for you to take a look at. Thanks for watching.